nature of the mind experience difficult times. The Buddha started his ministry with speaking about the nature of suffering, with the result that many people feel that Buddhism is very pessimistic because they talk a lot about suffering, they talk a lot about impermanence and death, and they talk a lot about the essencelessness, the egolessness of the individual. And so when you come across it, it sounds extremely, perhaps it sounds extremely pessimistic and gloomy. And so one might ask oneself, how is it that when you actually meet genuine Buddhists at least, they're usually a very jolly lot. And the reason is, I think, partly because if you face up to the fact that existence is inherently unsatisfactory, when it is unsatisfactory, you're not surprised. And when it goes right, then you feel, you're lucky. But the important thing is that the Buddha didn't just say that there is suffering, that life is inherently unsatisfactory. He asked why. Why is it that normally the way we lead our lives, the way we experience our lives, is basically unsatisfactory? Unsatisfactory also means that everything would be okay if only. It's never quite there. It's just over the horizon that everything is going to come together and be great. But right this minute, there are problems. But then when we solve that problem, there's another problem. And then when we solve that problem, another dozen seem to creep around. And so we're endlessly dealing with problems. And we think that that's a problem. And if we could only understand that that's how things are, then we would relax. Do you understand? One time when I was in the cave, for which I'm so famous. But anyway, one time when I was living there, it was the first winter that I had spent there. And in the spring, it was still snowing. But it wasn't so cold, so the soil was no longer frozen, which meant that although it was snowing, everything was seeping through. So I was in my cave and it was dripping in all directions, which was a big surprise. I hadn't realized it would drip, because during the winter it was all frozen, so it didn't drip. But now spring came, everything was dripping. I had a cold, I felt horrible, my back hurt. I was sitting in my little meditation box in the middle of all this, with everything dripping all around me. And I thought, yuck. And I thought, now I understand why people said living in caves is not a good idea. But then suddenly it occurred to me, in the middle of my misery, that didn't the Buddha say something about that life is dukkha, that life is dis-ease? And when I thought, yeah, right, the Buddha said, life is naturally, unsatisfactory, I suddenly realized that it was okay not to be okay. And when I realized that, it was like this huge weight which you're carrying on your back of always wanting things to be the way we want it to be, and to be, satisfying and pleasant and nice. And we sort of feel almost guilty or resentful when things don't go the way we want them. We have a standard by which everything should be measured. And if you take that away and you realize that it's okay for things not to be the way we want them to be, just to be the way they are in themselves, then there was this tremendous sense of like having a backpack full of stones dropping off me. And I felt fine. It was fine that it was leaking. It was fine that I didn't feel well. It was fine that things were not the way I wanted them to be. That was okay. Because the Buddha said also that the cause of our suffering is not something outside of ourselves. It's not, difficulties in our homes, difficulties in the countryside, difficulties in the world. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with the fact that we get sick. It's nothing to do with the fact that we get old in itself. The problem is our mind, which clings to the idea that we should be happy and satisfied. Now, as soon as we stop clinging and we let go of that idea that everything should be the way we want it to be, suddenly, ironically, we're happy. Because we're happy with whatever. If things are good, that's nice. If things are not good, that's okay. So, the point is that it is all in the mind. And so this is what we're going to do. Normally, we tend to project our version of the world, which we then react to. And so if our mind is full of anger, or grief, or guilt, or low self-esteem, then it's as if we had like a camera and we were putting different colored filters. So no matter what we are taking, if we have a dark blue filter, we only see everything is tinged dark blue, or green, or red. And we take that tinged vision as being reality. So what we need to do is to remove these various slides, these colors, from the mind so that we can see things as they actually are and not as we are presenting themselves. We all know this. You wake up on one day and you're feeling good and so then everything is positive and we attract towards ourselves positive events. And even if things are not going well, because we're feeling good, we can deal with it. And then other days we wake up and we're feeling down, we're feeling miserable, we're feeling upset or angry, and then everything is reflected in that way. People are annoying, people are difficult, everything is a problem. But the thing outside hasn't changed at all. What changes is our inner interpretation, our inner mood. So therefore, if we want to live in a world which gives us happiness and gives happiness outside to others, it's not just a matter of trying to create external social change. The only way things outside are really, genuinely going to change is by changing our own inner attitude.